with us again. Ronnie is a former South African government minister and was a leading member of the African National Congress during the apartheid era. It's great to see you, Ronnie. Over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Esther. I've been listening with intense interest to these outstanding contributions and extremely moving. And I'm honored to be with comrades here tonight. And I note that you have a huge following of participants, which is extremely important. I happened during the day to watch the events of the commemoration in Poland, the 80th anniversary. And I also was looking in at Al Jazeera, at what's happening in Gaza. And obviously, it's like we've all been seeing and experiencing through these years, and especially, and not only Gaza, my dear friend, the last 15, 16 months. The people of Gaza beginning to move back to see the rubble of their homes. And there was no connect. And the high and mighty were at Auschwitz, shedding tears. There were poignant presentations from some of the survivors. We know they would never invite somebody like Comrade Stephen Kapos. But you wouldn't have thought that Palestine existed as an example of ongoing genocide, as has been remarked on tonight. And then, lo and behold, the executive chief of the event there in Poland, with all those smarmy-wammy Polish officials pretending to be so concerned about Jewish people, by the way, one of the most right-wing governments in Europe, as we know. And I think the man's name is Ronald Lerner, clearly now with his American accent from Hungary, I think in background. And he let rip about October the 7th. He was ranting. Stephen, anti-Semitism was all about, as Garda referred, October 7th and the Palestinians. And although there had been, dear friends and comrades, some references to the fact that it was not only the 6 million Jews, and that's a huge, huge number, but the whole range of victims, from homosexuals and Roma, as we've heard earlier, to the 3 million Russian Soviet prisoners of war, in fact, and nothing about the 27 million Soviet people who died. But out of his mouth, there was simply that this Holocaust, this genocide, this awful genocide of the Hitler regime and fascism was simply about the Jews. And this is why it's extremely important that we have this statement, that it's about everybody. And I've seen some of the comments thus far. And of course, we understand why the Western colonial powers in the USA don't raise the issue of genocide of the Palestinians, because as comments have been streaming in here, what about the genocide that has taken place at the hands of the colonial powers from the Americas, North and South, to Africa, Namibia, Congo, 10 million in the Congo, right through to Asia, and of course Australasia, and the almost wiping out of the Aboriginal people. And this is why there's such complicity afoot. But it's more than that, because we know it's geopolitical and certainly geo-economic interests that matter to the West. So that's a fact, and a series of facts that we need to get across in our education, in the awareness that we must create throughout the world, global North and global South. Yes, I'm here in Johannesburg. We fought for our freedom against a Nazi fascist loving regime. And as I watched something of the goings on at Auschwitz, Birkenau today, the thought came across that if we hadn't freed South Africa through armed resistance and people's insurrection and the marvelous international solidarity that we received to strengthen our struggle, we could well have had those apartheid monsters still ruling. And I'll tell you this, they would have been sitting there in their suits, invited to Auschwitz. And the thought that came to mind was that these once Nazi lovers of the apartheid regime, a justice minister who became Prime Minister, J.B. Vorster, who in 1942, when they were not yet in power, he stated that what we are aiming for is a Christian national state. And he made the point that what we stand for is an ally of National Socialism in Germany. It's called fascism in Italy, and it's called National Socialism in Germany, and we call it Christian nationalism. The master race, Herrenvolk supremacy. And the point is that the same John Vorster, as a Prime Minister of South Africa, was invited to the Zionist settler colonial state, which South Africa was as well, apartheid state, as a guest of honor in 1976. And he signed the book and laid a wreath at the Holocaust Memorial Museum or Center in nearby Jerusalem. These were and had become allies in the struggle against the people of South Africa and the people of Palestine, while the ANC and the Palestinian people were united. And the alliance of apartheid South Africa and apartheid Israel was no coincidence, because what they had in common is the master race ideology. The Afrikaners claimed that they came to a land that was empty of black people and they had to bring civilization. They said they were chosen by God Almighty because they had a covenant with him to defeat their enemies. And when you see the parallel with Zionism, what people need to understand, and of course comrades have been making the point, is that Zionism is an absolute racist doctrine that within it, because of that, as with Afrikaner nationalism, is bound to move as the process develops towards fascism in response to the resistance that there will always be against injustice and dispossession. And this is why we see what is happening in Israel today. Of course, Labour Party, as Gaza well knows, tried to hide exactly what the Zionist objective was, but it was there from the start, and it's come out starkly now. So let me finish on this following point about the tasks which must be before us, comrades, friends, colleagues. The Palestinian people have never faced a threat as severe to their existence as they face today. Even greater, I would say, than 1948 and what followed. The Western imperialists want the gas fields of the Eastern Mediterranean. They want to ensure at a time when they're in decline that they can control the world, and through Palestine, through Lebanon, through what was called the Levant, they will control what lies further to the east. And we know that they see in Russia and China and Iran and the global south the greatest challenge to their waning influence. So Israel is in fact the battleship, the aircraft carrier that the Bidens, the Butchers, the Reagans have always referred it to, which is why they have this green light of genocide. And when we hear Trump now speaking about the beautiful real estate that is Gaza, with its wonderful weather and beautiful sea view, we realize and we note that he's chiming in with what Zionism is all about, of taking all of the land and creating greater Israel, which is why the neighbors, including Lebanon, Syria, and the others, are all in danger. So it's the challenge to us now to intensify our international solidarity as never before, as we received in South Africa, as the Vietnamese received. We have to bring it to greater heights. That must be the marching order, Tony and others, of meetings, discourses, conscious awareness, education such as this. The mobilization that has already shaken the West and Israel in the streets, the protests, including by Jews, particularly in the USA. But what will happen when all of these Israeli captives have been returned at the end of stage one of what's supposed to be a stage 3 ceasefire? That is in the balance, and we can see exactly what they're aiming for. So the intensification has got to be along the lines of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. But what I wish to underline here tonight is the need for us to mobilize and organize the greatest possible pressure against the governments of the West that support Israel, that give it the green light, that provide the complicity. We have to enforce the imposing of sanctions, and we've got to end that complicity. And I want to end on the following point of mobilization, which is being germinated by the BDS movement. And certainly I'm very glad to see, of course, Comrade Roshan Dadu, our convener of BDS in South Africa here. She's with us tonight. The organization of what is being called a global energy embargo, which is key, and it's got to bring in the harbors of the world. It's got to bring in the organization of the dock workers and the trade union as never before, to absolutely block the boats taking cargo to the Zionist settler colonial apartheid state as it poises to get to its final solution of the Palestinian issue. And we're talking about stopping fuel, oil, coal, energy that keeps Israel's economy functioning, but keeps its air force in the sky to bomb the hell out of Gaza and Palestine and Lebanon and Syria and possibly Iran and create further havoc. So I would say tonight, with all the passion at my age, Stephen Kapos, that I can command, we have to intensify the mobilization of the masses. And that goes, Comrade Garda, it goes with the reinforcement of intifada, of insurrection, as happened in South Africa, when we had the international community providing that kind of solidarity to isolate the apartheid regime. Our people were inspired to greater heights. It was their struggle, their resistance that overcame apartheid. And this is what I feel should be the message emanating out from our meeting tonight and from meetings all over the world. Thank you, Esther, and everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ronnie.